Okay, so we're going to show you how to put these Freedom exhausts on that we just showed you in the box, what a good quality they are. So we're going to show you. I'm going to go through this video a little bit quicker than we normally do because some of the things we're going to show you are we've already made videos. So like removing the mufflers, removing the tailpipes, we've already got videos on that. So you can kind of go back and watch those. So we're going to kind of run through this a little bit quicker. I would say this is a medium difficulty job. Definitely need some patience. Definitely take your time when you're doing this. What you'll find is the pipes where they slip together are actually kind of rusted and they're very tight. So you may have to pry and work and jiggle and hit with a rubber hammer to kind of knock them loose a little bit. That's the biggest frustrating point because once you get everything loose, it still seems like it's together and it really isn't. It's just rusted and stuck together. So you'll see when we do this, we've had this one on and off a few times and you'll see some different things on this bike. We have off, you don't necessarily have to do it, it's just we're working on this bike for a customer doing some different work. So some of the stuff's off, but it also makes it easier to shoot the video because you can see a little bit better some of the things that we're trying to show you. So the one thing we've done already is the saddlebags are off. Obviously you have to take your saddlebags off. Like I said, the heat shields on the mufflers are off, the exhaust tips are off. So we're gonna, like I say, run through this kind of quick. But basically, what you need to do is in the back here, you have the two bolts that hold your muffler on. Those are 13mm bolts. You're gonna take those out. Up in the front here, if you look down, it's kind of hard to see, but down underneath here is a 10mm bolt. You want to take that out. That's going to help get this heat shield out of the way. You can use a ratchet or a socket. And there's a clamp, a hose clamp on this. We've already got the hose clamp loose. But you're going to take that bolt out, loosen up the hose clamp, and that shield will come right off. Now, a lot of times it's a good idea, take the bolts back out and put them in where you took them out of. When you're going to have this, you don't have a ton of bolts out, but you want to do that. This clamp actually goes up here to hold the muffler. Loosen the clamp up. That's going to separate the muffler right here. That's the one step. So, and again, there's a video for that. And take these bolts out back here. This bike has the bag guards on it. Makes it a little bit harder to do. If you have the bag guards, you're going to have a couple bolts right here with a spacer. You're going to want to take that out to get that muffler off. But then you just kind of jiggle the muffler around a little bit. Twist it. Some of them come off real easy and other ones are a lot harder. So you just take that muffler off. Now, the one thing everybody seems to wonder about, and I see questions on the forum all the time, is if you look in the end of here, this is your catalytic converter right here. This is your catalytic converter in there. A lot of guys drill that out. I see pros and cons to it. I wouldn't recommend it, but that's your catalytic converter. And when we do the other side, I'll show you the other one. A lot of guys just think there's only one. There really is two, and there's one on the other side. So once you get your muffler off, your heat shield off, you get all that off, we'll go around to the other side and we'll show you taking that muffler off and kind of some things you have to do over there and to keep you moving along in the project. Okay, we're on the other side. So the same deal. You're going to have your two bolts back here. You got a couple clamps, hose clamps under here to hold this shield on. You have the clamps on the mufflers and the other extension pipe. Now the one thing you're going to notice on this side, there's no foot peg mount on this side. Customer on this bike, that's off. If you had that on there, you're going to see like a little bit of goofy bracketry down here where some stuff bolts. And it's real simple when you look at it. You'll see how it goes, but you need to unbolt some stuff down here to kind of get this shield off. That's really the only thing. So basically, down here you got a hose clamp here. Like I say, we have this already a little bit loose, so it's not going to come apart like this with your fingers. you're going to need to do a screwdriver. Now, pull that clamp off, and then you have another one under here. This one's a little bit harder to show you, but it's under there. Pull those hose clamps off, and you can see they just kind of loop through the mount there. They just go through, so no big deal there. Take those and pull them back. These are the clamps here and here. One on the muffler, and the other one is on this extension pipe here. That has to come off. So you loosen these up. These are 15 millimeter. Just slide that forward. Same with this one, loosen this one up. Slide it back. So now you're just going to do the same thing with the muffler. You're going to take the bolts out of the muffler. And again, if you have the saddlebag brackets, you're going to have to take the bolts out that mount the saddlebag to the muffler. Or I'm sorry, the saddlebag mount to the muffler. Okay, so you take that muffler out of the way. Now, this pipe up here is a split flange up here. Now, what that means is you can wobble this around. Now, this pipe is one of the more difficult things to get off. You may want to spray some WD-40, PB Blaster, something like that on there. Let it soak in, get it to work. You're going to want to jiggle this around like this. Okay, now this one, again, yours is not going to move this easy. We've had these apart a couple times. You're going to jiggle this around, pry it around, twist it around, whatever you got to do. But you want to keep twisting this and get that thing off. So when you pull that off, it'll come off just like that. Now, this is where your other catalytic converter is. You can see it right here. That's the other catalytic converter. So just for you guys that are wondering. Now, the other thing that's kind of important here, and some guys tell you you don't have to do this step, but I'm telling you, if you don't, you're going to wish you did, and it's so easy. You want to just take your oil filter off. Unscrew your oil filter. Now, if you got a pan, put a little pan under here. A pie pan will work good. You know, a cup, you're not going to get a whole lot of oil out of there, but you want to get this oil filter out of the way. So unscrew that out of there. I just have a little drip pad here. But get that oil filter out of the way, because it's going to make your life so much easier when you go to get this crossover pipe out, because it has to go through that side, so you don't want anything in the way right here. So that's basically all you need to do on this side. You get your muffler off, get this pipe off, and then unbolt your little bracket here, like I say, that's with the foot peg mount, and that's it. Take the oil filter off and you'll be in good shape. So we'll go back on the other side and kind of show you what to do there. Okay, so on this side again, like I said, we're going to have to loosen the nuts up here on the cylinders, up on each one of those. You're going to have to do that. We're going to have to loosen up this foot peg mount. There's some bolts under here, and we're going to remove the bolts that hold the front floorboard on. So, or I should say not the floorboard, but the whole floorboard mount. We already have the floorboard off, but you don't have to do that, but we're going to just take the bolts for the mount off. So underneath here, there's an 8mm Allen bolt right here. You want to take that one out and take it all the way out, because the exhaust is actually pinched between here, the bracket, and I'll show you. Up here, there's a big nut in there. It's 1 1/16 is what works on it. So you can see it's a pretty good sized nut. So you want to take that out. Now this won't come out because the exhaust is in here, but what you need is you need to get it out of the way, because underneath, if you look under here, this bracket right here is pinched between there. So we needed to get this loose so that this can move. The other thing is, under here is a clamp, another one of those big clamps. You need to take that clamp off. It's really hard to show you with the camera, so I already have it off. So I'm not going to really show you that because you can't see it. But underneath here is a clamp. This is the other spot that is going to be extremely hard to separate, okay? When the pipes are together, this is one of those spots that's really tight, and it's really hard to jiggle the rest of the pipes around because you don't have room. So this is one of those spots where you got to have a lot of patience. The one thing that you can do is down here on this bracket, it kind of sticks down a little bit right here. This is one of the spots where you can kind of jiggle and tap this with a hammer at the same time you're jiggling and try to get that work back. Again, some PB Blaster WD-40 up on here is going to help you out a lot. And the one thing, this rear pipe here, this is all one unit, okay? The front pipe separates. So don't think that this pipe is going to come off of here, because it's not. It's all the same part. You're going to separate the front pipe down here. This all stays together. And I'll show you that, but just so when you're prying and trying to get it off, don't think that's going to separate, because it doesn't. It stays all together. The other thing you're going to want to do is you're going to, like I said, take this floorboard mount, and there's just two 8mm bolts under there. Nothing comes out, you don't lose any brake fluid, nothing like that. And this is one of those that I said I took the floorboard off so you can see with the camera. You can kind of see what we're doing here. Just makes it easier. You don't have to remove the floorboard itself. A little bit more to go. Okay, you can just kind of let it dangle by the brake line there. If you want to put a rag on your crash bar, you can kind of put a rag there so you don't scratch anything up. But now you can see you have all the access to this pipe. The other thing that you need to do in the front is you need to remove the front spoiler. Some guys say you don't have to take the outer cover off. I say just take it off. It's so easy to do. Just take it off. That way you don't have to worry about scratching anything up. And again, we have another video that kind of shows you how to do that. Real simple, just some bolts. Nothing falls apart. Real easy to do. So that's that. So the other thing now that we got everything kind of out of the way, we have the clamp loose, we have the bolt, we have the foot peg mount out. You're going to want to take loose the nuts up on the cylinder. 13mm nuts. Now they are not hard to get to, but you just kind of have to be careful. The other one on the other side, you want to do it from the other side of the bike. I already have it loose here, so I'll unscrew it. But this side, this one you can get from here. The other one, just walk on the other side and do it from the other side. So we get those loose, and then you kind of pull the flange back. And the flange is going to be stuck on there. You may have to pry it a little bit. It may be stuck if it's never been apart. You're going to do the exact same thing up on the front. And again, you can see how easy this is without that big cover, the lower spoiler, without that side on there. If that side was on there, you'd have to be kind of finagling yourself in there and putting your hand the right way and getting it. So it's just better to just take it off and you can get right into it. Do the other bolt from the other, or the other nut from the other side. Again, pull that flange back. Now you just kind of want to be a little bit careful because your oil cooler is right there. So you want to, make sure you don't bang into that. The last thing you're going to want to do is in the pipes here, and this customer has them off already, but in the pipes, in the back of this pipe, in the back of the front pipe, you have your oxygen sensors, kind of a spark plug looking thing, in the pipe. You're going to want to disconnect that. If you look back maybe 6, 8, 10 inches, you'll see a connector on the wire. Just pop that connector apart, disconnect it, because if you don't, and you're jiggling these pipes around and you pull, you might break the wire or break the connector, and you don't want to do that. So you want to disconnect that. Now, it's really up to you. It's 6 one, half dozen another. If you have a wrench and you can unscrew those sensors when they're in here, might make things a little bit easier. You don't have to do it, but just take a look at it and see what you think as far as what your ability is and if you can do that. Now, for the most part, everything's loose now. You can see this all jiggles around, everything's loose. So again, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try to separate this rear pipe. Now, again, this is one of the really hard things, and we've already got it kind of apart. So you're going to see, even for us, this is still a pain when it's apart. But you want to jiggle that apart, and believe me, what I just did where it came apart looks so easy. It is not. Let me tell you, it is not easy. So you want to jiggle that, get that apart, okay? Now, you can see here how this came apart right here. See how this pipe and this pipe are the separate, and this is the solid pipe? That's what I was talking about earlier, where this isn't going to come out. Now, you just kind of have to fish the bracket, this pipe here, the crossover pipe, you kind of have to fish it out from around the foot peg mount and also up in the cylinder head. So when you're jiggling and shaking down here, make sure the top of the pipe where it goes into the motor isn't beating everything to death, because you're going to scratch it, because you're going to be watching down here jiggling like this, and you're not going to pay attention to the top and what's happening up here. So you want to be careful. So you just kind of pull that out once you get it jiggled around, and again, with the oil filter out, this part comes right out. If the oil filter was in there, you would be trying to get around that and you'd be having a nightmare just because of that. And also, it'd be a good time to change the oil if you need a filter or oil change kit, whatever. We have them on the website, go to the dealer. But you can see, that's the crossover pipe. Here's your catalytic converter. There's everything as one unit. So you just take that out, set that aside because you don't use anything on there. The front pipe basically falls out. I mean, that can't be much easier. Once you get it apart, that pretty much falls out. Again, because we've removed the floorboard mount, we've removed this side panel, it comes right out. So it's definitely one of those spots where doing a little bit of pre-planning, a little bit of extra work there will make that so much easier. So for the most part, that's it. Everything's apart, everything's off. The hardest part is just separating these two spots here that I showed you. Here's where your oxygen sensor would be, up in the front pipe. We have plugs in this one, so if you guys that aren't running oxygen sensors, you're going to need to buy the O2 sensor plugs. We have those on the website, as well as the gaskets. You don't get gaskets in the new kit, so you're going to need some gaskets. Now, the last thing you're going to want to do is look in the cylinder here, in the front and the rear, and a lot of times, I've heard of Victory doesn't have gaskets in some bikes. I don't know why that would be, but guys tell me that. So you're going to want to make sure you look in here, and if there's a gasket in there, you want to dig it out. You want to get like a pick, a dental pick with a hook on the end, and hook it and just kind of pull it out of there and get the old gasket out. So make sure that you do that or you're going to have a leak. If you don't get that old gasket and you put a new one, it's going to be a lot harder. So make sure you do that on both the front and the rear cylinder to solve some trouble down the road. So that's basically it. That's getting the exhaust completely off the bike. So what we'll do next is we'll show you how to start putting on the Freedom exhaust. We'll show you how to start putting that on the bike. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do when you get your exhaust is kind of get everything out, lay it out on the floor. You'll see it comes with all the nuts and bolts and everything like we showed you before. So one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to have to take these heat shields and put them on the pipes. So you'll see in the bag of hose clamps, or in the bag of all the nuts and bolts, you get hose clamps. Hose clamps just go right in this little tab down here. They just go through, so unscrew them, put them in the pipe, or put them in the heat shield. Slide them through. And then you're going to want to put your pipe in there. So you just kind of spread them apart a little bit, just however you got to do it to get that in there. and then you're going to want to tighten these up. Now you don't have to do it completely tight. You want to get them pretty snug, but you don't have to do it completely. And I don't know if you've ever seen my other videos, but you can use a nut driver on these too, a socket or a screwdriver. I prefer the nut driver because it's easier. A screwdriver always seems to slip out. So a lot of people don't realize you could still use a socket on most of these hose clamps. Now I was looking through the exhaust, the instructions that comes with the exhaust, and I didn't see anything where it tells you to do this step. So I might have overlooked it, but in case you're watching the video and you know, doing this, there is also instructions that they provide with the kit, so you're not on your own. The other thing we did is on this particular model, this guy's bike, we're not using oxygen sensors, so we did put the plugs in already in the pipes. So that's one thing. If you are going to use your oxygen sensors, this is the rear cylinder pipe, you're going to want to put that sensor in now, screw it in. Put some never sees on the threads. You want to make sure you do that so you can get it out, because those things kind of freeze in there. You might have noticed that taking it out of your stock pipes. They're really hard to get out sometimes. And the other thing is, make sure you don't get any of that never sees on the end of the oxygen sensor, because that will ruin the sensor. You can't get anything on there because then it won't give you a correct reading. So you just do the same thing with both pipes. And a good idea here is, you see we're working on the cardboard. I just opened up the box and I'm lay it all out. If you lay these pipes on your garage floor without something underneath them, you're going to scratch them all up. So make sure you have something, a blanket or a sheet or something that you can use so that you don't scratch these up. Like I say, I'm just using the box because it's just real easy to do. This is kind of one of those, if you have a helper, to kind of help you hold those clamps. But that's all you do. You're just going to go right along and tighten all these up the same way. Again, you don't have to get them super tight, but just get them snug enough. That way they're tight enough to hold it, but if you have to kind of move it around a little bit when you're putting it on the bike, you can still move them. And then at the end, you can kind of get in there and tighten them up all the way if you need to. So we'll finish putting these clamps on and then we'll show you the next step. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do once we got all those heat shields put on, this is the mounting bracket. This is real easy to put on. Goes underneath the bike like this. These part of that bracket is where the actual exhaust pipe goes on. It's going to bolt on here. These are what bolt to the motor. This cutout here is where the oil filter would go. Give you kind of a reference. So what you're going to want to do, they give you 2 bolts, and you can read in the instructions which ones they are, but they're 2 bolts. The one thing you're going to want to do is make sure you take a little blue Loctite. You can use red, I guess, but blue is a little bit better because you can get the bolts back out. It's not quite as permanent. Just put a little dab of blue Loctite on there. That way these things won't vibrate out. You don't have to worry about it. So you don't need a lot, just a little dab. So this bracket will go underneath here. You got to kind of fish the other end up through the belt. So you're going to want to put that in there. Put one bolt goes here. And the other bolt goes up here. And you're going to want to tighten these up. And again, these you can tighten pretty well all the way, because you're not really going to, there's no adjustment here, so there really isn't anything. Once you get both bolts in, you can snug both of these up pretty good. And at this point, if you want, you can put your oil filter back on. Because nothing will be in the way for doing this anymore. So you can put that on there, so if that was to drip a little bit, it won't drip anymore. Just snug that up by hand. That's a K&N oil filter, by the way. It's not a factory one, it's a K&N. And they have the spot on the end to tighten them up with a wrench. So we'll go around to the other side and I'll show you what to do there now. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we come over on the right side and we're going to put our foot peg mount back on. Because you don't need that bracket's not in the way or anything. So you just, put that back on. If you want to put a little Loctite on there, now's a good time to put it on there. This nut is obviously a pain. And now it's stuck in there. Alright, so we'll come back to that, but the nut's stuck in the socket right now. So you're going to want to tighten this up. So you tighten that all up, and that's all set. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put your front pipe on. Okay? So on this one, again, we're using a plug here, but on the front pipe, you don't want to put the oxygen sensor in yet. You want to leave that out till you get it all mounted on the motor. We're also putting in a new gasket, so we're going to want to put that gasket in there. Now, sometimes when you put that gasket in the cylinder head, it'll stay in there, and sometimes it'll constantly fall out. So when you put this in, if it's falling out, like see how that doesn't want to stay in there? What you can do, you can take a little bit of silicone, like exotic silicone. You can even put a little bit of grease on there, just something to hold it. You don't want to use a lot, but I just put a little silicone and see how that holds it on there. And you just need it to stay in there for a second. You're going to take your pipe, you're going to slip it in there. Get your flange lined up. And this is again where if you have a helper, it makes this go a little bit easier to get this flange lined up. There you go. Get that on there and then put your nuts on so that it doesn't come back off. You don't have to tighten them up. Just kind of get them on there enough. So just get them finger tight so it doesn't fall off and you'll be in good shape. So that takes care of that. Now you're going to move to the back of the bike to the mount, where that mount we just put in on the other side, right here. And what they give you is they give you something called a carriage bolt. A carriage bolt is just a round, kind of a round head bolt with a square flange in it. So what you're going to want to do is in the pipe itself, and it's kind of hard to see here, but you're just going to slide that carriage bolt in like that, and it locks. That way it doesn't spin. That square flange locks. You're going to do that, line it up with the bracket, and put it on. Put it through the bracket, and then you have a flange nut, which is a nut with a flange like a lock nut, and you're just going to put that on. And you can do it, just kind of get it finger tight, you know, a little bit tighter than finger tight, but that's about it. That way, if you still need to do some adjustment, you can, you can still move stuff around. Again, this is a 15mm nut. So get it on there tight enough, but you don't have to go crazy, because you still want to see how it's pretty tight, but we can still move it a little bit. So you want to do that. Now we're going to do the exact same thing with the other pipe. So you're going to want to put your gasket in there. The same thing. You can see how it's kind of falling out. It doesn't want to stay. So we're just going to put a little silicone on it. Now it'll stay right in there. So you're going to put this pipe in. When you're doing this, be careful you don't whack the threads of the studs, because if you do, then it's going to be really hard to get the nuts put back on. And if you do, we offer some studs on the website. If you run into where you took the old exhaust off and the studs are goofed up, you can actually replace those. We offer a couple different ones, so you can actually replace them. Same thing, you're going to put your nuts on. Your carriage head bolt, slide it down in the pipe, slide that into the bracket. Okay, snug it up. You don't want to go super tight. You know, basically what you want to do is you want to have this where it still slides a little bit, front to back here. Because what you're going to do is you're going to tighten the bolts up, the nuts up on the flanges, up on the cylinder head. And if this is tight back here, it won't allow the pipe to slide forward when you tighten those up in the end. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to show you how to put the mufflers on. Okay, so now that we got the pipes all on, the next thing going to be to do is put the mufflers on. Now the one thing you're going to notice is the mufflers, you can screw them up left and right from left. So if you read your instructions, it'll tell you the part number 105 is the muffler on the right side. And where you can see that is right on the mounting flange. It's engraved in there. 105, and the other one's 106 for the left side. So make sure you check that first. So that you're going to slide that on. You're going to take your T-bolt clamp, this is called a T-bolt clamp, and you're going to put that on so that the nut part is facing down. You want to have that down towards the ground so you can tighten it up. So you're just going to put that on, put this muffler on exact same way that you took the other one apart. You know, your stock one, exact same thing. Got it kind of jiggled a little bit. Now this is one of those spots where we might have to loosen that flange up. The clamp won't quite go in there, so we're going to want to loosen this heat shield up just a little bit. This is kind of one of those things why I said you don't want to get it all the way tight, because we need a little bit of space there to get that jiggled in. So you're just going to kind of twist it. And again, if you have bag guards, real pain in the butt. Loosen these shields up a little bit more. There we go. Can kind of hold that heat shield out a little bit so that muffler will go on. It's not going on easy because these things actually fit really easy. So we just loosen that shield up there a little bit, you can see. Now they give you 2 bolts that basically look like the same bolts you took out. So you're going to want to try to get them lined up. And with the bag guards, again, like I say, it's kind of hard to do. And on some of these that I've done, really just depends, but you can you may need a longer bolt here, so it just depends on your bike. But you're going to see this one might be one of those ones that need a longer bolt. It's really close to catching. So get those bolts tight. You're going to spin your clamp here so you get it to where it's aimed down. Kind of snap your heat shield back on. I actually pulled the clamps out. So now it's kind of a real pain in the butt to get that clamp back in there. So you just want to tighten those up. Tighten these bolts up. You're going to need to put your little brace back in here for the saddlebag guard. And we'll do the other one. So put your clamp on again. Put the bolt side down. We got to do the same thing here. We got to loosen these clamps up. And you just want to do them just enough that you can slide that under there. There we go. You can kind of hear it snap once you get it in the right spot. and just from seeing what I'm seeing here, I do think if you do have the saddlebag guards, you probably want to get a little bit longer bolt. These work, but I can see where they need to be a little bit longer. If you didn't have the saddlebag guards, you'd be fine. But this other bolt's going to be a little bit harder to get in. Okay, so then again, you're going to come up here, you're going to tighten these heat shields. Now, before you get all the rest of this tight, the next step you're going to do is you're going to go up on the motor and you're going to tighten up these flange nuts, the actual exhaust nuts. And tighten these up because you want to get it snug up to the motor and get that sealed up good. And like I said before, if you have anything else tight, then the pipe's not going to move freely. It's going to be bound up and it's going to cause you problems. So go ahead and tighten all that up, and then I'll come back and show you the next step. Okay, so everything's tight now. We got the heat shields tight, we got the mufflers tight. So the last thing you really got to do is the clamp on the muffler that we had just put on. It's a 7/16. So just get it, aim that bolt. If you did it right, it should be aimed towards the ground. Just slide it, make sure you got it on the muffler like it didn't accidentally slide off. Tighten it up real good. Don't go crazy, but tighten it up. Okay, you're going to do that. And then up here, that mounting bolt, you're going to want to make sure that that's tight, because we haven't tightened these yet. Make sure nothing came apart there. You're going to go around, you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now basically the whole exhaust system is on, everything's tight, you should be good to go. The last step is going to be the exhaust tips. Now the exhaust tips come in chrome or black, and as I showed you before, this is the black one. You're just going to slide them right in. They come with a little package of bolts and lock washers. Put a lock washer on. Now this is another spot where definitely would be a good idea to put some Loctite. Put a dab of blue Loctite on there. So you're just going to line the holes up. And this is a step, if you think it's a little bit easier, this is a step that you could do before you put the mufflers on. You don't have to do it now. You can do it right before this step when we put them on. It's not a big deal. For some of you, it might be easier to do it that way. Okay, and then they're just an Allen wrench, just tighten them up. You can do the same thing on the other side. Now one thing I'll show you, you might say, why is there all the different holes in there? Some of these, you may be able to turn it like that if you want the angle out, if you want the angle back. You know, I know the exhaust tips we make and we offer ourselves, we do it that reason. And the other reason is when you have all the bolt holes, you can switch them side to side, it won't matter. And that's basically all there is to it, to putting the exhaust on. Now the last couple steps you're going to do, you're going to put your saddlebags back on, you're going to go up here, you're going to put your floorboard back on, put your floorboard mount, and you're going to put your front fairing back on. And that's basically all there is to it. So that's how easy it is to do. Like I said, and hopefully you saw in the video, that the hard part is getting the old exhaust apart. This new Freedom exhaust is high quality, true dual system. The other thing is, where I showed you the catalytic converters in the stock pipes, the Freedom system does not have catalytic converters, so there is nothing there. So that's basically all there is to it. Thanks for watching.